Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Timeline Divergence. I am your host, The Drifter. In this series, we explore the ultimate what-ifs of history. We uncover the lost technologies, the forgotten civilizations, and the parallel realities that could have been. We examine the exact moments where humanity took a wrong turn. We study the buried blueprints of a much brighter future. Today, we are looking at a world where the Apollo program never ended. Imagine a modern reality in the year 2026, where humanity did not stop at a few dusty footprints. Picture a timeline where massive lunar colonies harvest resources around the clock. The moon is no longer a dead rock. It is a bustling industrial hub. The black sky above it glows with the constant traffic of heavy freighters. In this lost timeline, the roar of the Saturn V rocket is a routine weekly event. Children do not just read about space exploration in old history books. They watch massive ships break the atmosphere from their own backyards. The thunder of 32 million horsepower shakes the ground every single Tuesday. The night sky is filled with the steady, blinking lights of orbital transport ships. We are a true spacefaring civilization. If they never stopped building the Saturn V, we would definitely be preparing for the next massive leap. Mars would be a fully functioning outpost by now. The asteroid belt would be our infinite quarry. We would harvest exotic elements that do not even exist on our home planet. We would have limitless energy flowing back to Earth. Look up at the sky tonight. It is completely empty. It is a quiet, lonely void. That emptiness is not a natural progression of science. That emptiness is a deliberate choice. You are living in the timeline that simply gave up. You are looking at a sky that was supposed to be alive. But that timeline died in the year 1972. Let us travel back to the exact moment the timeline fractured. Let us look at the greatest technological triumph of humanity before it was quietly dismantled. Before the blueprints vanished, the world witnessed something terrifying and beautiful. You must understand the sheer physical presence of the Saturn V rocket. It was not just a machine. It was a man-made god of fire and steel. It stood 363 feet tall. That is much taller than the Statue of Liberty. When the countdown reached 0, the world held its breath. The ignition was not just a loud sound. It was an apocalyptic physical event. The massive engines produced 32 million horsepower of thrust. The deafening roar was a chest-crushing force. It literally ripped the air apart. The blinding golden light tore through the thick Florida atmosphere. It turned the darkest night into pure white daylight. The shockwaves could be felt for dozens of miles. Spectators felt the violent vibrations traveling up from the concrete and directly into their bones. The ground shook as if the Earth itself was trying to hold the massive rocket down. The sheer violence of the thrust was overwhelming. Yet, it flew with perfect mathematical precision. It was a masterpiece of raw power and delicate engineering. We conquered the heavy gravity of our home world. We pierced the veil of the sky. We sent men across the dark and freezing void to walk on another celestial body. The year was 1969. Humanity felt completely invincible. Then the forward momentum just stopped. By the end of 1972, the final Apollo mission returned to Earth. The door to the cosmos was quietly shut. We never went back. Today, modern space agencies openly make a baffling admission. They state that they no longer possess the technology to rebuild the Saturn V. They claim the blueprints are incomplete or unreadable. They say the intricate manufacturing knowledge is permanently lost to time. How does an advanced civilization simply lose the knowledge of its greatest achievement? How do we misplace the pinnacle of human engineering? Think about the absolute absurdity of this current reality. We preserve ancient clay pottery in climate-controlled vaults. We keep the original paper sketches of Renaissance painters under strict laser security. Yet somehow, the exact schematics to build the ultimate spacefaring vessel were allegedly lost, destroyed, or forgotten. We carry massive supercomputers in our pockets today. We have global networks of artificial intelligence. But we cannot easily replicate the engines that engineers built using wooden slide rules and drafting paper in the 1960s. This is not just a technological regression. It is a mathematical anomaly. A timeline does not simply walk backward without a massive external force pushing it into the dirt. Let us look at the historical gossip that surrounds this fractured timeline. Many theories suggest that the technology was never lost through simple incompetence. Whispers in the scientific community have long pointed out the glaring anomalies of the era. Public opinion at the time heavily rumored that if we truly possessed such flawless technology, we would never have abandoned the moon so abruptly. When independent researchers look for the original telemetry data of the first moon landing, they hit a massive brick wall. Official reports state that massive amounts of magnetic tapes were erased to save money on storage space. Do you erase the most important scientific data in the history of the world to save a few dollars? Independent investigators argue the math simply does not add up. The heavy tooling and the massive factories used to forge the giant engines were systematically dismantled. Surviving documents from the era show a desperate rush to scrap the remaining hardware. 3 complete Saturn V rockets were completely built and ready to fly. They were fully funded, but they were never used. They were laid on their sides and turned into static museum exhibits. Reportedly, the brilliant engineers who built these machines were laid off and scattered to the wind. The entire specialized supply chain was deliberately broken into pieces. Why would a society do this? We must examine the deep systemic fear of the 1970s. Official explanations always point to budget cuts, foreign wars, and shifting public interest. But independent researchers paint a much darker picture of the era. Surviving documents suggest a growing panic among global superpowers. The rapid expansion into space threatened to bankrupt massive terrestrial institutions. But more importantly, it threatened to completely destabilize terrestrial borders. Many theories propose that governments began to look at the limitless horizon of space and felt absolute terror. If humanity established permanent independent bases on the moon, who would govern them? How do you tax a citizen living on another world? How do you maintain a fragile Cold War when limitless resources are waiting to be harvested in the asteroid belt? The old world order relies entirely on scarcity. Space offers infinite abundance. Whispers from retired defense contractors suggest that a spacefaring humanity could no longer be easily controlled by terrestrial laws. Let us dive deeper into the alleged suppression. It was not just about stopping a rocket launch. It was about killing a dangerous idea. The Saturn V represented absolute freedom. It represented the ultimate escape from the confines of Earth. Public opinion heavily rumored that the ruling class realized the profound danger of this freedom. If anyone could eventually buy a ticket to the stars, the power dynamics of the entire globe would collapse overnight. Allegedly, the quiet decision was made to ground humanity permanently. The destruction of the blueprints might not have been a clerical accident. Many alternative historians suggest it was a highly organized eradication of knowledge. They claim it was a deliberate burning of the modern Library of Alexandria. The knowledge was simply too dangerous to be left in the public domain. It had to be heavily classified, compartmentalized, or entirely wiped from the institutional memory. Imagine the deep frustration of the brilliant minds who designed these machines. They spent an entire decade calculating complex orbital mechanics by hand. They tested experimental alloys in extreme thermal conditions. They poured their blood, sweat, and absolute genius into forging the future of the human race. Then, they were allegedly told to pack their desks and go home. The public narrative was aggressively shifted. The media stopped talking about sprawling lunar cities. They started talking about low Earth orbit. They sold the public the space shuttle program. It was a magnificent flying machine, but it was a massive step backward for deep space exploration. It was specifically designed to stay close to home. It was a highly complex delivery truck for military satellites, not a brave explorer of the deep void. The grand dream of the cosmos was replaced with the mundane reality of telecommunications and orbital spy cameras. Whenever an independent investigator asks the hard questions today, they are met with the exact same official answers. They are told the technology is obsolete. They are told the supply chain no longer exists. They are told the original contractors went out of business long ago. But look at the sheer unbelievable scale of the Apollo program. 400,000 people worked on it. Thousands of separate companies were heavily involved. You do not just naturally misplace the combined output of 400,000 brilliant minds. Surviving documents suggest that key components of the propulsion systems were highly classified under strict national security protocols. The advanced combustion instability solutions developed for the massive engines were quietly buried. Whispers in the private aerospace industry claim that if a modern company tries to replicate that exact 1960s technology today, they hit invisible regulatory walls. The absolute best knowledge of our species is allegedly kept behind heavy steel doors. We trade infinite cosmic frontiers for glowing digital screens. We traded the vastness of the universe for the tiny glass rectangles we carry in our pockets. The systemic suppression of the space age might be the greatest unseen tragedy of our modern era. The timeline fractured because a few powerful entities allegedly decided that the status quo was much more profitable than human evolution. We were on the absolute verge of becoming masters of the solar system. Instead, we remained trapped on a shrinking planet. The cold, sterile, rusting silence of the abandoned launch pads today stands as a depressing monument to this lost future. The massive steel towers that once held the roaring Saturn V are now just silent ghosts holding up an empty sky. The heavy, suffocating feeling of being trapped in low Earth orbit is the direct physical result of this exact divergence point. We look up at the stars, and we are completely grounded. If the Saturn V technology was maintained and evolved, we would definitely be a multiplanetary species today. Let us examine the exact logical consequences of that lost timeline. The massive rockets of the Apollo era were just the beginning. They were the primitive, brilliant prototypes of a much grander vision. If we kept building them, the engineering would naturally iterate and perfect itself. The payload capacities would double and then triple within a single decade. We would not be sending tiny, fragile capsules into the dark. We would be launching massive orbital construction yards. We would definitely assemble vast interplanetary cruisers right in low Earth orbit. The sheer cost of leaving the atmosphere would plummet. Space travel would become as routine as boarding a commercial airliner. We would build spinning orbital hotels. We would construct massive zero-gravity hospitals where the sick could heal without the crushing weight of the Earth. The most crucial butterfly effect of this lost timeline is energy. The moon is completely saturated with an isotope known as helium-3. It is deposited there by billions of years of solar wind. It is the absolute perfect fuel for nuclear fusion. If the Saturn V program survived, lunar mining operations would be fully operational by the 1980s. Massive automated harvesters would constantly scrape the gray dust. Heavy transport ships would bring millions of tons of pristine energy back to our home world. This would completely alter the global energy grid. We would possess clean, limitless power forever. The toxic smokestacks of our current reality would never exist. The endless, brutal wars fought over desert oil fields would be completely erased from history. We would fuel our civilization with the quiet, invisible power of the stars. We would definitely turn deserts into green forests, using unlimited desalinated water. The entire concept of global poverty would be mathematically eliminated. But limitless energy and infinite resources are exactly where the narrative takes a dark and terrifying turn. Independent researchers have long debated the true motives behind the sudden budget cuts of the 1970s. Surviving documents from the era suggest a growing systemic fear among global superpowers. Think about the absolute foundation of the modern world. Our entire economic reality is built upon the concept of artificial scarcity. When resources are limited, they can be metered, controlled, and heavily taxed by a centralized authority. Many theories propose that limitless energy from lunar helium-3 would utterly obliterate the petrodollar. It would completely dismantle the global banking system overnight. The ruling class of the 1970s allegedly looked at the roaring Saturn V and did not see a vessel of human exploration. They saw a terrifying economic weapon that could destroy their empires. Public opinion heavily rumored that governments began to fear a spacefaring humanity. If a citizen can harness the power of a dying star, they no longer need a centralized power grid. If an independent mining colony can pull infinite platinum and iron from a wandering asteroid, the terrestrial gold standard completely collapses. The stock markets would free fall into absolute chaos. Whispers in the scientific community claim that the elite decision makers realized a profound and chilling truth. A society with infinite resources can no longer be easily taxed or controlled by terrestrial laws. You cannot govern a population that can simply fly away into the dark. You cannot threaten a lunar city with an economic embargo when they hold the energy supply of the entire planet. The sheer vastness of space offers absolute, undeniable freedom, was the alleged suppression of the Saturn V, a tragic choice made by flawed human systems, terrified of losing their grip on power. Many alternative historians strongly believe so. They point out that every major leap in human progress has historically been heavily regulated or crushed by those who profit from the old ways. The internal combustion engine replaced the horse. The internet replaced the printing press. But the Saturn V threatened to replace the entire geopolitical structure of the Earth. It threatened to erase the imaginary lines drawn on maps. While these rumors lack official verification, the coincidence of abandoning the moon just as we mastered the journey is incredibly hard to ignore. We built the ultimate key to the universe, and then we allegedly threw it into the deepest ocean to protect the wealth of a few men. We must highlight the sheer absurdity of our current timeline. Let us deeply contrast the majesty of the lost future with the depressing, grounded reality of our present day. In the 1960s, human beings conquered the ultimate void using nothing but basic slide rules, drafting paper, and raw courage. The computers on board the Apollo command module had less processing power than a modern musical greeting card. Yet, the engineers of that golden era calculated incredibly complex orbital trajectories by hand. They mathematically threaded a microscopic needle moving thousands of miles per hour through the freezing dark. They built glorious machines of fire and steel that flawlessly delivered men to the lunar surface. They walked in the gray dust, planted a flag, and returned home safely through the burning fires of re-entry. They commanded the absolute cutting edge of physics. They looked impossible odds directly in the eye and absolutely crushed them. Look at the bitter contrast today. We carry massive supercomputers in our pockets. We possess artificial intelligence that can process millions of data points in a single second. Our material sciences and advanced manufacturing are decades ahead of the Apollo era. Yet, modern space agencies openly struggle to send uncrewed, robotic probes safely to the exact same destination. We watch in absolute disbelief as modern landers crash violently into the lunar dust due to software glitches. We are told by experts that space is simply too hard. We are told that the mathematics are just too complex to replicate quickly. We traded infinite cosmic frontiers for glowing digital screens. We traded the vast, star-filled sky for tiny algorithms designed to keep us scrolling through endless, meaningless content. We have infinitely more computing power today, yet we have zero systemic ambition. They built pyramids of steel that touch the heavens and survive the vacuum of space. We build disposable plastic that breaks after a few short years. We are completely consumed by the mundane. You must feel this profound loss deeply in your own bones. Contrast the vibrant, explosive energy of the 1960s space race with the cold, sterile, rusting silence of the abandoned launch pads today. Imagine standing in the Florida swamps during a Saturn V launch. The air is incredibly thick, humid, and heavy with anticipation. The countdown hits 0. The sudden ignition is a blinding wave of pure golden heat that burns your retinas. The sound is not just loud. It is a physical, living creature that beats violently against your chest. The concrete trembles uncontrollably beneath your feet. The sky is literally torn wide open by 32 million horsepower of perfectly controlled fury. The smell of burning rocket fuel is sharp, toxic, and highly metallic in the back of your throat. It is the undeniable scent of absolute human triumph. It is the vibrant electric atmosphere of a species reaching out to touch the face of God. The energy is raw, pure, and infinitely optimistic. Now walk through those exact same historic launch pads today. The atmosphere is completely different. The explosive energy is totally gone. It is entirely replaced by a heavy, suffocating silence. The massive steel towers are slowly rusting away in the salty ocean breeze. The giant concrete flame trenches are deeply cracked and overgrown with thick, creeping weeds. There is no thunder shaking the earth. There is no golden light tearing the sky apart. There is only the cold, sterile wind whistling through the abandoned metal scaffolding. You can almost feel the restless ghosts of the lost timeline standing in the dark shadows. They are looking up at an empty, quiet sky, wondering why we suddenly gave up the greatest adventure in human history. The heavy, suffocating feeling of being trapped in low Earth orbit physically crushes you. We are living inside a locked cage. The door was wide open, and we decided to weld it shut from the inside. We did not simply misplace the blueprints to the stars. A civilization capable of calculating complex orbital mechanics on paper does not just forget its greatest triumph overnight. We consciously chose the timeline where maintaining the illusion of terrestrial control was far more important than limitless human evolution. We traded the infinite, abundant universe for a comfortable, heavily taxed cage. We allowed the nervous architects of our reality to ground us permanently in the dirt. I want to leave you with a chilling realization. Think about the heavy silence of the modern space age. Did we really lose the mechanical ability to build the roaring engines of the Saturn V? Or were we simply warned never to go back? Is it a mere historical coincidence that the heavy door to the cosmos was violently slammed shut the exact moment we finally peeked inside? Look at the empty night sky tonight and ask yourself the hardest question. Are we genuinely incapable of returning to the lunar dust? Or are the terrestrial governments of the world completely terrified of what we might build if we finally stay there? We do not lack the genius to elevate humanity. We simply inherited a timeline where the fragile systems of the past were not yet ready to embrace the light. What do you believe actually happened with the lost Apollo missions? Do you think the alleged suppression is real? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this dark journey through history, please hit the like button and subscribe to Timeline Divergence for more uncovering of the paths we never took. We will continue to investigate the buried technologies and the stolen futures of our world. Until next time, stay curious, question the official narrative, and keep watching the timelines.